I call to order the Gearhart Planning Commission on August 12th. All commissioners are present. For anyone that doesn't know it, we will not be having a public hearing today for the conditional use permit because the applicant has withdrawn his application. So we'll scratch that off the agenda. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? That's the minutes and the financial report, and we don't have any correspondence, and no correspondence.
So moved.
So moved. Terry is moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Russ is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Excellent. Staff, would you like to give us a report?
Just one, I think, that I can think of right this second, and that is the Banta partition appeal that you approved in June, I think. It was appealed to City Council, and last night they upheld your decision with one minor change. Well, a pretty interesting change, that they will pay for the property that's being either by easement, well, we're going to do it so it's given to the city, right? They're going to pay for the trail right away. And that's going to be narrow from what said in the condition 40 to 45 feet, because we're trying to get it to curve over to meet the railroad right away. We're just said we're going to make it as narrow as possible to get over there, not a big number or a constraining number. So those are the two things. They allowed us to look at it like and survey the property and really understand how
Shannon?
wide that trail needs to be to get to Railroad Avenue.
I didn't hear anything. Is that being recorded? Okay.
And then they say they pay for it. So
There you go.
yeah, I was pretty excited. I thought, you don't have to.
Okay.
No, Kip, you have to pay for it.
What are they paying?
Well, then they'll pay like we do with the street vacations. We'll get an assessor valuation, and I haven't done that for so long. Is it like 50% of the value? There's some percentage that
Something.
that the city will pay of that value.
So,
Based on the square footage.
so they're actually buying the land from the Bantas?
I think that's fair.
Either that or buying the right of, yeah, so if it, as a right of way, yeah, we'd be buying the right of way.
Buying the easement or buying?
Well, I think
It could go both ways, but the net is the same. It's based on square footage. So if we buy the easement, buy the right to go through there, and let's say we take, it might be 600 square feet of land, then we take the value of their land, divide it by the size of that land, multiply it by 600, and it's a small amount, it really is.
So we're not buying the property, we're buying the easement.
Yeah, I think that's the way that it was done. I don't know.
Well, you know,
transfer,
the
but-
more I thought about that overnight, I thought we might just want to make it city right away. That's
I
what
mean,
it
if
should be.
the assessed value is low enough, you might as well buy the whole thing.
Yeah, in the long term, it will make more sense to just make it right away again,
Right.
like it was.
All we had to do was to.
So anyway, it made me think that that'll make it more attractive to other future land dividers, that we can keep getting pieces. So anyway, there's, Mr. Banta made a case pretty adamantly not to require it, and the council was 4-1.
Yes.
So is that a done deal for him then? Or?
Yeah, well, he could appeal it to the state.
Oh,
That's expensive and time consuming, and but he can.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Carol. Yeah, we couldn't offer him money, the city council could.
No, exactly. And I think they respected your opinion, and most of them. It was a good result.
Good, okay. Chad, do you have anything to report?
Yeah, I've got a few things to report, but we had on an idea for the agenda is to either talk about short-term vacation rentals and then downward cast light. Would you like that during this period of time or somewhere around new business?
Somewhere around new business, I think.
Okay, then I've got a couple of other things just to report. Just to let you know what building permits we're doing, as of June versus June, let's see, 2020, we did a total of 25 building permits for $161 million.
1 year.
Or excuse me, the intake for the permits, not 161. The intake for the permits was $161,000. And that's just the permit fees. And one duplex at $12,000 permit fee. So about 26, and that was for all of last year, 2020. In 2022 date, from January to now, we've already done 23. So year's not over, we've got quite a bit to go. So we anticipate beating that number by quite a bit, the 26 number. The city did refinance their water bond, as you've probably seen in the news, and that's been finished and it's closed. And the net effect is that the city is going to save over the life of the bond about $380,000 in principal and interest. So that was a nice move. Interest rates are nice and low. Our bond rating is good here in town, very good. Public Works staff, we're going to talk about vacation. I don't have a Parks update from the Parks Committee. I don't think I wasn't at the last meeting, so.
Oh, good point. I was just going to mention, and anything also want to add is that we have a joint work session on the first draft coming out of the advisory committee on August 31st. Just a reminder. And then we have a first hearing for you in the Parks Plan, September
I think
9th.
it's 9. I have a wrong
So
there.
that's now coming right at you for review and recommendation to council for adoption.
What time is the joint meeting?
I think it's 6.
Set time
Is it on the calendar yet, Michelle?
That I
Would it be
don't
a
know.
Christie or would it be?
Hold on, I can check online. So it should be online on the calendar. Cityofgearhart.com. Upcoming events, view calendar. What's the date of the meeting?
31st.
Is this council's fifth Tuesday?
I showed it 6:30, joint city council and planning commission work session.
I better put that in here.
Yeah.
Now, online, the calendar works pretty good. So if you use your phone and you go to cityofgearhart.com, the calendar comes up very readable. And it'll show you the upcoming meetings, which has been a lot. So.
Is that an in-person meeting?
So far, it's going to be, I think, something similar to this, and we'll see how it goes. We'll make the decision as time gets closer.
How do we get council in here too? Do you think?
We'll figure it out. Do it
Yeah,
outside
okay.
in the lawn. I'm not sure. I haven't thought that far ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll figure it out.
The old, we'll figure it out. All right, so the joint council meeting. Okay.
That's also with the
Advisory committee.
Yeah, as well. So,
Good point.
Probably
And
be
there
an
are
online version. And
5 or so of them, 6.
right.
So
So
fire
you're
station
talking
big
about
enough?
15 people in here, so that's not
And
good.
us, so.
Can we meet in the firehouse, in the fire bay?
that is a Tuesday, possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It still might be warm. No.
Oh, Carol. Okay, anything else?
Elk Collaborative, we're finally getting down to the Elk Declaration of Cooperation, which comes up with all sorts of things that cities and counties should work on, may, but not shall, work on to work with the elk-human interactions. And so that is looking at like the beginning of September, they're going to be signing that Declaration of Cooperation. And then that just gives us some things here in the Planning Commission to start with. And then in the City Council to work with in regards to policy. No feeding ordinance has already been one of those examples. And some of the others might be looking at the fence ordinance and looking at other things that could help minimize the impact. As well as other departments such as Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, they're going to have their items in that declaration of cooperation, of things that they're going to work on, such as hunting regulations, possible culling of parts of the herd, and that sort of thing. So that will be spread around here pretty quick, but it should be happening at the beginning of September.
And are all the jurisdictions signing it in the North County?
Mm-hmm.
So the point is to have a consistent policy of what we all should be trying to do to change it. And this takes,
Well, at least it's more of a, it's called a declaration of cooperation. And it talks about what kind of things we want to accomplish and why, but then it's up to the individual communities, counties, and organizations to kind of go within those parameters.
and
So-
actually adopt some things.
Do any other locations have similar problems?
Not quite, no, they're all quite unique. The county's got some issues, Seaside's got some issues, but not like Gearhart, no.
Really? Not even Warrenton?
No, Warrenton just seems to deal with it. They've got a lot more open space. Warrenton's one of the largest cities in the state of Oregon. So they have, as far as square miles, footage, whatever you want to gauge that by, they're quite large. But Gearhart is special because of our landscaping, our level of landscaping, the amount of people in this area, and the fact that we're on the Elk Superhighway. So it's really kind of created a little bit more of an issue. So Gearhart was the one who started this process with Oregon Solutions.
I saw one of the cows has a tracking color on it.
That was one of the things that Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife is going to work with, is to track, I think, up to 15 of the animals. And so they've started, and I think it was $18,000 per cow or per animal to set them up with tracking and all that. But it'll be pretty interesting to see and start seeing some of those maps. As much as they provide them, you don't want to give the hunters too much of a head start.
Why not?
They can tell us
Or you might.
colors when they're coming through your yard and eating your flowers. Okay.
So, fire department update, just real quick. Just to let you know, for fire calls for Gearhart Fire Department for this year, from January 1st to August 12th. This time last year, we were at 278 calls. This time this year, for that same period of time, we're at 417.
Why?
So we've seen quite a gain. There's a lot of people coming down. There's also a lot more people living here, are some of the issues. I don't see that there's a lot more coming down. I think from the year before, yes. But in the whole grand scheme of things, it's not as busy as it is for a normal summer so far. But calls are definitely up, even over the year before.
What was the last 401?
417 from January 1st to August 12th.
Those are mostly medical calls.
Yeah. We can always say that they're mostly medical, but we've had quite a few fires this year. Car accidents, rollovers, lift assists are a few of them, but that's in the medical realm of things. Rescues, search and rescue. We have assisted Seaside a lot this year. That is something that is increasing our call volume for sure, because Seaside is, just like everybody trying to find people, it's hard to find people. And with property values and the amount of volunteers that fire departments have right now, it's harder and harder to find them, so they're short. There was 2 months ago, Chief Joey Daniels was working on the beach as a lifeguard. So we're responding when they get overwhelmed. Probably about 7 calls to their 1. So they respond down here once, we go there 7. And we're happy to help. We work very closely with them, and they're a good group, but that's been good. We've also gone to Hammond, we've gone to Warrenton, Lewis and Clark, and Astoria maybe, over this last period of time. And that's just within the last couple of months. Yes, sir.
Is there an organization in the state that would be called something like the State of Oregon Associated Fire Chiefs or Fire Marshals or something like that?
There's all of those. Yeah, we have a local fire chiefs association in Clatsop County. One of those chiefs is elected into a position where they are the county fire chief, And they're the head honcho on mass casualty, big issues and things like that. So major fires and things like that. There's also, there's national, state organizations for marshals, for chiefs, for firefighters, for women firefighters, all sorts of things.
Well, my question stems from the thought that why couldn't the Association of Oregon Firefighters and Fire Chiefs, and Fire Marshals, be handled funding-wise, kind of like the National Guard?
Yep.
That, you know, every district gets some funding so that they've got the personnel.
Never heard that before. Now that I
Statewide
do.
funding for every individual fire department, so that we have the people and we have the resources we need, because we can't rely on volunteers when they're not available, and there's still going to be fires and medical emergencies.
Well, right now, Gearhart is probably in the best shape out of any county fire department as far as the number of volunteers that we have. And that's carte blanche. That's not per call. That's not per square mile. That's not anything. But Chief Josh and Chief Bill before him did a really fantastic program. And so we've got, I think, 29 and about to have probably 32 total volunteers, which is excellent. And not only that, but none of our volunteers live west of Highway 101, except for John Blissett, Randy Como, and those two are about to retire. It's just, property is too expensive. So a lot of the questions about where the location of the fire department would be and why it would be out on the highway, you know, farther away from downtown, well, in all actuality, we're getting closer to our volunteers with the fire department, and so there's a pretty good offset, almost equal. So yeah, there's a lot of that sort of stuff going on, but so far they're strong and they're good. I think we've got 8 women firefighters now. And so the dynamics have changed quite a bit, and it's great. We're just waiting to get that first fire engine out with nothing but women on it. I think that would be a pretty neat day. So it just happens on who's available.
Can I have another conversation with you in the future about this funding?
Would love to. Would love to. Real quick, tomorrow I'm meeting with the city council to give them the numbers of the fire department, the fire station relocation costs, and the land transfer agreement, and the survey results for the fire station. So things are coming together at the very last moment. So what the city council may do tomorrow, and I hope they do, is forward or go ahead and file for the November 2nd election to go for a bond for the fire station, so the people, the citizens of Gearhart can make the choice. The geotech work came back. I don't know if I went over this last time. I don't think I did, because this just happened again 3 weeks ago.
I think
Oh.
you covered.
The geotech work is it's a fabulous place to put. Not only that, but Dr. Jonathan Allen, I was wrong if I reported that it's outside of the, Dr. Jonathan Allen with Tagami, in their study they did for the Seaside High School, has determined that this site that we've chosen is outside of the extra large tsunami. Not just the large, which is most of Gearhart. This is a site outside the extra large because of its distance back from the ocean, because of everything that's in there between the ocean and that site, the elevation of that site, and that dune is extremely strong. So it's going to save us some money in the foundation type that we're going to use as well. So pricing's coming together. The geotech came in and it was really good. So far so good. I think that we'll finally get that question answered here soon.
Question? Or is, I don't know if this is too sensitive to answer, but what if the bond, I mean, are your commitments that you're maybe gonna make tomorrow night, what do they mean if the bond doesn't pass?
So if the city council does not push forward with the bond, then the project's done for now.
I mean, if the bond doesn't pass the vote.
If the bond doesn't pass the vote, so we're going to be doing things kind of congruently, I suppose, with the planning of potentially bringing this outside piece of property into the city, Gearhart's urban growth boundary,
Yeah.
not into the
Should come
boundaries.
here to you.
So right now, according to the county, they could build, let's say, I think I'm just going to use numbers that are very close, but 20 houses, 2 per acre. If they come into the urban growth boundary as an R1, as you know, it's a 10,000 square foot minimum, so it would be 4 per acre. So they would be able to double the amount of houses, but it would be developed in the same manner that Gearhart is mostly, with the same type of density, not higher, but the same. Even a little bit lower because we have 5,000 square foot lots here and everything. So this will be a neighborhood with just 10,000 square foot lots. But a lot of them are actually bigger than that. So we're going to push forward with that between now and the November election, as though we are looking at receiving, or the people vote this bond in. And I don't know if we're going to complete that process or not. It's still, the timeline is up in the air. But we would like to be able to get this property to the city of Gearhart, especially if people vote in the bond. What we're looking at getting is a nice large piece of 2.5 acres for a park between the two neighborhoods. That's the Pine Ridge Drive neighborhood and this new neighborhood. So 2.5 acre half moon sized park. And then let's say 2.25, it's a little bit more than that, acres for the fire station up on top of the dune. Now let's say we go and we get them into our urban growth boundary, but the bond fails. So then they would still be able to go ahead and develop that property in the R1 fashion for lots per acre. And they would also be bound to still give us that property, both the park and the location for the fire department, which is dedicated as a park and as a location for Public Works Fire Department. So in the future, if the community changed their mind, I mean, we could still develop the park now. And then if the community eventually changed their mind and went for the fire station, we could put it up there, but at least we have it aside, because Gearhart does not have any property otherwise. You know, we are land poor for sure.
What's the threshold for the bond? Is it 50% vote?
No, it's 51% of the vote. It doesn't have to be, no, there is no threshold.
51%.
Of the vote, but no, you know, 3 people could vote, and as long as we get 2 votes, we're okay.
51% of the people voting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I'm starting to hear a lot of good things. People are starting to wrap their heads around this as far as the location. You know, yeah, there's some naysayers.
Voters, not the general public.
A little both, actually. The general public is that are non-voters are more positive about this than voters,
Well, that's
which
good
was
to
a little
hear.
interesting. But it's hard. It's a small survey. You know, we only got so many surveys in there, and this is the second survey we've done, multiple town halls. I think we need to make a decision to move forward, and then let the people decide, and be working on this. I think it's time.
Is there any way that, how big is that park? So 2 acres?
2.5.
For the actual park, city park?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way to negotiate with those landowners to include some type of endowment that helps support the maintenance of those parks?
Yeah. Potentially. I mean, I think when it comes out and we really figure out exactly how many pieces of property are in there and what the value is that we're getting compared to what they're getting, which I think is still very close, especially when you consider $3 million for half an acre is what we were looking at. Nah, it was a little bit more than half an acre. But yeah, there's a possibility of doing something like that.
We're doubling their development,
Yeah.
ability there, so.
We are. So they're getting 20 more houses. I don't know, Russ, what do you think? About $165,000, $185,000 per house, per piece of property.
Going to
What are you talking, workforce?
Just the dirt.
Just the dirt?
Just the dirt.
Well, maybe out there it would be, anywhere around here it would be higher than that by
Yeah.
100.
So multiply that times 20, you know, you're looking at about a $3 million worth, I think, if they brought in all those pieces of property.
But they would also be doing the building.
Yeah.
Correct, and the development and the roadways, and they're bringing in a water line through that will connect the city's water to this area, improving water quality throughout that entire area, and also for safety, redundancy is going to be improved, and we get the park and the fire station location.
Does that loop the water system?
It does. It loops the water system. So as right now, if we had a major outage on Highway 101, a large part of that town would actually go out and be out for a period of time. With this system, it will allow us to shut valves off and isolate a lot more, better. And then it will also increase fire flow. And then dead ends on a water system are something you don't want because, things just kind of pile up, whether that be chemical or, sediment. So by creating a loop, it keeps things moving.
What's the capacity? People ask me about our water system. We put 40 houses out there. Are we in any danger of running out of water with the underground system?
We've never had enough water to provide for Gearhart, ever, especially in the summertime.
Okay.
We buy in the summer months about half of our water, a little bit more than half, somewhere close to $400,000 a year. We pay the city of Warrenton for water because we're not allowed to produce enough. Because of the pumps that are out on the beach and our location to the mighty Neocoxie River, because we're a certain distance away, we are not allowed to pump in the summer for what their usage was. And that was right from day one, and that was known when they made this decision. They were hoping that Water Resources Division would then change their mind after we did a study on the Neocoxie. We have wells in the Neocoxie and electronic measuring devices in the Neocoxie. We told them that by doing that, and this is before Chad, that it wasn't going to work. The testing is not going to be any good. It's going to show erratic levels and all this other stuff. And they says, we'll do it anyway. And so we did it, and then they called us, why are your testing levels erratic and all that? And I said, well, because we told you it was tidally influenced and we really can't measure that and all that. And they go, great, okay, so can we get more water rights? Or no, it's a large fight. It's a large bureaucracy.
State.
Yeah, state
No,
water.
it's huge bureaucracy.
So, we're going to be tied to Warrenton, which isn't such a terrible thing. I mean, it gives us redundancy, for sure. It's a little bit more expensive, but the city is eating that expense, not you. Rates have not gone up from $39 every 2 months. Yeah, $39 every 2 months. Unless
In the winter.
Depending on how nice your lawn is. I know which neighborhood you live in.
Or if you have a leak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a big bill.
And we haven't raised our rates in 15 years, at least. Might be 20.
Has Warrenton raised the rates on us?
Yes. And we've absorbed it. Efficiently, our water system is working very well. We have such a small staff that we're able to absorb that. But I think we're getting close to being done absorbing that. We're going to have to start looking at a slight water increase. And if we had too many more houses, a few hundred extra, we would have to look at upgrading our water treatment facility also. That was the long answer to that question.
Okay.
Thanks.
Is our water tower always full?
No, but most of the time it is. In the winter time, we try to keep it full because the genius in the way that this system was built is that 1 million gallon water tank on the top of the hill over there, sitting at 165 feet in elevation. When it's full, at night, when water usage is low, that creates enough static pressure to pressurize most of Gearhart's system. And then we only have to run one of our smaller maintainer pumps during the night to kind of keep 70 to 72 PSI, so that when you turn on your taps, you get water coming out, you can fill your bathtub and water your lawn and all that. There are times to where we're creating as much water as we can, the reservoir gets low, it's a battle, we get it up there. In an emergency though, all we would have to do is go and open up Warrenton's water, fill it right up, and then go ahead and close it again, and then we're good to go. And that's the benefit of that connection. We
Well,
also have the same type of connection with Seaside.
aren't we worried about Warrenton's water capabilities in the event of a tsunami?
Yes, but in the event of the tsunami, we'll turn most landscaping systems off, so I think that'll save us a lot of water we'll be able to maintain. But no joke though, the idea of how to become resilient by being able to tap those sources, be it the 1 million gallons that's up there or the 250,000 gallons that's under the pickleball tennis courts. I have to say both for political reasons.
So the water tank up there, that's Warrenton water into inside there.
No.
We pump it from here all the way to there.
We take it from the beach, and then we bring it in, we treat it, it goes into the pickleball tennis ball courts.
Yeah.
Then from there, generally at night, when electricity sometimes is a little cheaper, that's not so true anymore. We then pump it up to that Warrenton Reservoir, just by opening up a gate up there. We have a series of 5 huge pumps. 3 of them are medium, 2 of them are gigantic, and then depending on the flow, those pumps turn on.
Fascinating.
What were we talking about?
No, a lot of things.
Anything,
Way off track.
anything else?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm good for now until later.
Okay, and Cheryl, did you have
Oh.
anything?
Nothing.
No.
I do have one more thing for you, and this one I think you'll enjoy. All right, survey summary. I had the speed trailer out on Highlands Lane. I don't know if any of you noticed that.
I did.
There was a big conversation about how the fire station and these new houses and things would impact the intersection at Highlands Lane and Highway 101. And this is the area that goes to Highlands Neighborhood Reserve, Palisades, Mallard, Teal Court, and the Delray Beach approach. So I don't have any opinions on whether or not this is going to increase. But for 29 days, from July 13th to August 11th, he wants to take a shot at the amount of cars that passed both ways altogether, because it counts both ways.
At that intersection.
How many days is that?
Oh,
29
you mean
days.
it counted when we were coming up Highlands? It
Yes,
didn't just count when we were going the one way? Because I slowed down when I came. But think about it, I sped up going
That's
the other
okay.
way.
I've got the average speed for both directions, so you didn't get away with anything.
Let's see, that's,
I think 300.
300 cars on 29 days?
Yeah.
oh no,
Wow.
oh no, that's in a day.
We're gonna blow your mind.
Yeah, 0.
Anybody else?
Are you talking about 101 or are you talking
No,
about
no,
the lane?
Highlands.
Highlands Lane.
Well, how-
Both ways.
About
Highlands.
the speed trailer was about 300 yards inside the Highlands Lane,
Oh, I got
Okay, I have to do some
near the
math.
fire station site.
Both directions.
6,210.
1,800.
Uh,
I have to do some math here because I can tell you how much goes through there. How many minutes are there in a day? Because I can tell you there are 10 a minute. Oh, there's 10 every 5 minutes.
just take a wild guess.
Thousands.
59,411.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
Did I tell you that
53,000
traffic,
up.
Yeah.
the
59,000 cars.
traffic is horrible?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's how many cars have gone past that back and forth. All the neighborhoods, the beach and everything, and that was not over July 4th.
Now, how many were going over the speed limit?
Well, we're gonna get there.
95%.
One red Porsche.
Okay, the speed limit is, the speed, the speed limit is 40 miles an hour there,
Right?
Yeah.
okay? What was the average speed of those 59,411 cars?
45.
55.
62.
50.
Okay, combined it was 35.24.
Wow.
You know why? Because when you come off Highlands, you're going slower heading, when you come off 101,
Yeah.
you're going slower going up. But when you're coming back from the beach, you're racing to get away from it.
Okay, well,
Do you have it going both directions?
I do. So closing east, meaning, okay, so away west. So cars going away towards the beach was
Going west.
going west was 36.35. Coming this way was 34.08.
Slow.
Exactly the opposite of what you thought.
Not a lot.
I think people are mellow coming off the beach and excited coming off.
But
the
we'd
beach.
also see the sign. I'd see people come up to it, they're going like 50 or something, and all of a sudden that sign goes up and it says 50, and they go like, oh, I better slow down.
Okay, so now that you got all these
There you
averages,
go.
anybody want to take a shot at the high speed?
85.
60?
88.
88?
Anytime you put a speed shot out, you get people like me and Terry.
And Terry,
They wanna
I'm just
really
guessing,
see the-
Terry.
are you the person that rode your vehicle on the beach?
Yeah, every day.
That is a mess.
Every day I come down and you see that. So yeah, I've got the full report for you, so you can have it for your own use.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever gone over 80 miles an hour in that car.
You're doing it wrong.
Okay, anything else,
That's in
Chad?
second gear, right?
Okay,
In my
all right.
driveway.
Moving forward, commissioners. Dan, you have concerns?
I'm sorry.
Yes. Commissioner Brown.
That's
Well,
okay.
since they moved the sailboat out of their driveway, I had to come up with a new concern. When Mr. Moore, and this has to do with the school site, when he submitted his letter to withdraw his application, he stated in there that he was going to continue to negotiate or discuss this with Chad and the city council. And my two concerns are, number one, he's going around us, because I think he finds the city council an easier mark. But what really concerns me is these discussions need to be made public. And I know at every meeting, we have to speak up and talk about ex-parte communications that we have had with somebody concerning something we're going to vote on. And I want to make darn sure that the city council is doing the same thing that we are doing, is saying if they're talking to Maury, they need to report this after the meeting. And Chad, also, you need to keep us up to date on the discussions you're having with him. Because I think the public, the drumbeat out there is, we want to know, we want transparency. And that particular phrase led me to believe that he thinks he can negotiate something behind the scenes. And I think that we really need to know what's going on. And I would like the city council to be aware of the fact that they need to do that, if they are required to do that.
Was this concerning the park? I mean, there was a line in there about continuing negotiating this park lease or something that,
No, he said he was going to withdraw his application, but he would continue to discuss this with Chad and the city council, not with us.
yeah.
And that got my attention.
No, and you're absolutely, I agree with you, Gary. And I was concerned about this negotiating for a park, and then it was saying that if the park was contingent on us approving the CUP, and we didn't know anything about a park, or I didn't, maybe you did, Austin.
Well, he kind of tipped his hand. What he's going to do is come up with a 3-acre park. He wants to have a lease to the city in exchange, build 45 market unit apartments. I mean, that's exactly what he has in mind. And you need to let us know the discussion. I don't know whether you're required or not, but I would like to know the discussions you have with him. And is the city council under the same obligation as we are to report any discussions they have with him?
I think that your second question first, that ex parte communication would come into effect if there was a decision to be made. But I think that you would discuss that, yeah, I discussed this issue with Bob Maury about the potential donation of a park, and leave it at that. The fact that you're not in there for any type of gain of revenue personally, I think kind of insulates you from, the Urban Ethics Commission. And if you just say, yeah, I talked to Mr. Maury about such and such, I think you should be fine. So I would do that and kind of, especially seeing as how we're looking at some pending decisions. The first part of your question, I completely agree with you for multiple reasons. The fact is that this is, either the fourth or fifth time that there's been brief discussions about potentially getting the park, and then that was rescinded. The last 2 times I have made it a point to bring lots of people with me. And the last time I brought the mayor, a councilor, fire chief, public works director, and myself, because we want to make sure we're all hearing the same thing. So I would be happy that if there's a couple of you that would like to volunteer as tribute, that anytime there is a meeting, I will get, because I have to, this situation is a little different. I need to get a group of people together to hear the same thing that I'm hearing, because it changes.
Well, I'm not sure that we want to get involved at that point, but what I want to know is with you or the city council people, we need to remain an open view. We need to be unbiased, and we don't want personally, I don't want to be negotiating with this guy. What I want to do is have him bring something to us and say, this is what my plan is. But my concern is that the city council, because I've talked to one city council person who's told me about all these discussions he'd had with Maury, but I'm not sure that he is announcing those at his meeting so the public knows. You know, I heard this at a cocktail party. Should the city council be aware they need to let the public know the discussions that they are having with him?
Are there minutes of these meetings or anything? It might help to keep a record.
Yeah, I heard you better the second time. My apologies. I get your question a little bit better now. So there hasn't been any formal discussion or negotiations at all.
Are they obligated, like we are, to say, hey, I had a discussion at the meeting, I had a discussion with Maury?
If a decision is being made about that situation, yes. So let's say it comes to the planning commission whenever you met, you should say that I had ex parte.
And should the city council do the same thing?
And the same thing with
Are
them.
they doing it?
Well, we haven't gotten any negotiations. There's no decisions being made. That's my point, is we have never gotten there. It's been a lot of, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? But no decisions, no negotiations.
Okay.
And the city council wouldn't be at the conditional use permit hearing. I mean,
No,
Unless
but
it's built.
if it got to them.
so it's
I know he
a-
was giving city council people tours of the project and all that.
Yeah.
I want to know what's going on, and I think the public deserves to know.
Well, I
I
think
think
that
Carol's got a good point
if
there.
there's a public, if there's a quorum, there has to be a record of what that meeting, there actually has to be a notice.
Well, we don't have any quorums. I don't let that happen.
So
But
it's one-on-one.
there is no allowable use in that particular zone other than a school. It's not even a park. Park's not even a conditional use.
Yeah, if no application is filed, then that's also questionable if the ex parte contact doesn't apply because there's no application right now.
So they would have to come through the planning commission to even, I think, make that a park.
Why aren't we talking about zoning change?
Well, that's what has to happen.
It has to happen first before any of this other stuff.
Well, I understand that. I just want to know what the city council's talking to Maury
Yeah.
about.
Well, I
City
think
council as a
that's
body
why-
is not.
Okay.
There's individuals occasionally that get into the middle of the conversation, but there's no negotiation.
So unless they're doing it as a body, they're not required to report any of these conversations they have with him.
It's not public.
So if I sit down with Maury and talk to him, I don't need to come here and say, I had a discussion.
No.
Well, I always thought I had to do that.
Unless there's an
Until
Unless
he's
there's something
in
coming
front of us.
before you,
Okay.
and you
Right now, there's nothing before.
now
us.
it's gone.
Okay. All right.
Well, as long as we're speaking about that, if I get this right, Maury's his rescinding his application,
Yeah,
he also had an email or something that suggested that the way you interpreted the, the dwelling capacity down there, the way you interpreted it was wrong according to his interpretation.
all right.
Now, do you think he's on any, is there any validity to what he's talking about?
I have
Or
this,
did you even, did you read that at all?
Oh, I read it. Of course. No, I think it was a reaction to the staff reports, clear questions about the public zone that he's in, the need for a caretaker in that case, because the public use on the site has ceased. Now we have an empty building. So that was part of it. And then the question about, the potentially 4 units and why are these units so big? And so there was just, it appeared that there was more planned there, and
would it be helpful if I read this short email?
Sure.
This is the email that he submitted to us and it's not very long. He says, "Hi Chad, after careful review of the staff report, it's clear that the nature and scope of our long-term goals for the school site and the need for a caretaker dwelling are misunderstood by city staff. We will be respectfully withdrawing our caretaker CUP, but I think it's beneficial that we continue discussions with you and the council regarding creating much-needed park space for the community. We should be able to create a mutually acceptable park design and cost estimate over the winter, as well as have a draft of lease agreement completed. For site security reasons, finalization of a lease agreement will be predicated on us having acceptable caretaker unit. Most likely, we will be resubmitting a new CUP caretaker dwelling application in late spring 22 after we have a site groundwater monitoring results for the winter and a sense of what DEQ will support for site septic capacity and location. We are hopeful that we can work together so that the community can have an almost 3-acre park to enjoy next summer. Regards, Bob.
So do we know specifically what the city misunderstood?
This is the longer one he wrote after that.
Yeah.
Sounds like
The longer one is the one where he.
Yeah, which was yesterday.
Yeah.
Long-term goals, he's talking
What
about.
was your
Oh,
question
we
again?
didn't see
I
We
that.
didn't
didn't
see
see that.
We didn't see that
I
one.
emailed them to you yesterday.
The longer one?
Yep,
Yeah,
It's
I
like
have
4
that.
pages.
yeah.
4 pages?
Or
Oh, I didn't see it.
Was
I
it
didn't see it
a,
either.
2.5, sorry.
I didn't see it.
And maps.
Me neither.
So
No,
does that have specifics
I can
about
see
what
it.
the city
You know what?
misunderstood in it?
So did you open the attachment, Russ?
Well, I'm not sure what I opened. I've got this.
That's what I
I've
said. That's just a couple of
I've got-
illustrations that went, I'll pass this down to you. I'll just see if you.
no,
recognize it.
I did not get it. I have
I don't think I got
the
it.
correspondence you sent out from Jean Marks.
But you did. Is that like 6 pages?
Well, this, yeah, like 6 pages, it's got some drawings
Uh-huh.
of DE, of septic
Right.
evaluation plans
And you got that yesterday.
That thing
and I
yesterday?
got it, I got 8/11.
Yeah,
No, I don't have any.
I didn't get it
I didn't
either.
get it.
No.
that's weird.
Can you
Well,
make copies of it?
I've got it right here.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
when I went down, I was
It doesn't say
thinking,
that much more.
he clarifies his long-term goals is to clean up and stabilize, establish a caretaker dwelling, work with the city for public park space, work with the community to provide community meeting facilities in the school, and apply for a zone change that will allow creation of needed housing in city-operated parklands. So we've heard that. Clarifies the caretaker dwelling and what it's all about. He says the report states that it can be argued that zoning is this something?
Yeah, the standard board says, go ahead.
Okay, the report states it can be argued that the zoning implies taking care of the permitted use, i.e. school functions essentially. The report argues that once the school has ceased, the need for a caretaker dwelling disappeared. No school or other permitted use, no need for caretaker. However, there is no support for this approach in the Gearhart zoning code, not in the definition of the conditional use, the conditional use chapter, or the public, semi-public PSP zoning district chapter.
And that's true. It's a very nuanced thing that like it says, it can be argued. The caretaker doesn't really fit the zone by when there's no public use there.
The other part he
That's all I
had
said.
here was the primary concern raised by representatives from police, fire, and public works experts is that the existing gates, which are currently locked, prevent these essential services providers from accessing the site, thereby inhibiting their ability to provide good safety to citizens. These are valid concerns, and a simple condition of approval requiring the owner to provide public service providers access to the site is appropriate. So I was looking
And
at
that's what I thought he would do if he came to the hearing. He'd say, fine, you can have the code.
Yeah, and the other part is the caretaker dwelling size was an issue. The GZO does not define caretaker dwelling size, is his response. Location, duration, materials, nothing. However, the report states that the proposed size of the caretaker dwelling is not a typical size and configuration. And they said that, he says that there's no basis for concluding that.
It's just, it can be argued, right? I mean, it isn't.
Availability of site in other zones, building the site security is his principal concern. The school building is 10 times the size of City Hall and a target for vandalism if not protected. Parking, yeah, septic system. The rest is not, just basic stuff, but that's the basic part.
Does that answer your question about the misunderstood? I mean,
Yeah, I think so, but that's not
there's some
really the city misunderstanding.
Exactly.
It's more of his misunderstanding.
It's where we go sometimes.
Well, there's some discretion in here, and that was gonna be up to you. to decide.
So we will see it again in the future.
Next spring.
Yes.
Meantime, what
Oh,
can we
excuse
do?
me.
I mean, can you do, we just have to want, can you do anything you want, Sarah? Just keep the construction going and the.
He can maintain the
septic-
building and try to preserve it. It's an old building that takes a lot of work. You know, there's leaks, there's lack of heating. You know, it's an old building full of, there's some asbestos in there for sure.
Do they need to open the, provide the service fire emergency access?
I think for now it's an unoccupied building and we're okay. The one concern is that there's a water main that goes under what's known as Lincoln Avenue, which is the street that goes down there. But if we had to get to that, the backhoe get through just fine.
It just goes.
So,
Hey, Jeff.
sorry,
Oh,
so
there's
we can't construct in this building.
No.
He can maintain.
Right, but you can't create.
There's been no building permits applied for. I don't think he can build. But I mean, let's say there's some structural things that have to be taken care of because of a roof or, you know, something, a wall that needs to be replaced because it's about to give. He could apply for a building permit for that because it's structural, it would need a building permit and we would approve anything that would be maintained.
Like what he's done now on the side of the building,
Yeah.
that wouldn't need a permit though.
No, it's not structural.
Oh.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Chad, I just have a concern that a lot of time was put into this, and Carol spent a lot of time doing that. All of the public hearing material was out, and none of that is free. But yet he cancels on us, you
He
know.
paid a $2,000 fee.
Thank you, that's what I didn't know.
We
And
increased
he will have to
those
pay
fees.
it again, won't he?
Yeah,
If he reapplies?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with what she
No,
said.
that's good,
Yes.
okay.
That's
That's
money.
fine, I didn't know that piece.
David, you had a
I
question.
have a question for staff, actually Chad. I heard today that the offer of parking was withdrawn for the event this week. Is that the case?
For the plot?
Facebook.
Event,
For the event this week?
in a landscape.
Yeah.
In a landscape.
It's just.
What happened?
The Inno Landscape had requested from Bob Maury that they be able to use the parking to offset the concerts that were happening this weekend. And it sounded like a good idea, the city council agreed, Bob Maury agreed. I understand there's some Facebook chatter about it, but I just don't have anything to do with that. It doesn't ever really prove to come to fruition, but the short answer is no, I haven't heard. I know they're looking for volunteers to help with the parking situation down there, but that's all I know.
The in the landscape published that it was, that's where you park.
Pardon?
Yeah,
That's the word I heard.
and it's published as though that's a parking spot, so if they don't park there, let's say it's shut down, we'll survive. I mean, this is nowhere near 4th of July, and we did that just fine without any extra parking. I mean, it's all relative, sorry. I think we did all right.
Okay. Any other concerns of the commission? I have a concern. I've seen things where there's been movement to ban fireworks in Gearhart, and they point to Cannon Beach banned them. But I've never seen any reports. I was hoping you had some reports from Cannon Beach, how they're banning of fireworks down there. Did it work, or did they still have a problem? I just don't know. I thought maybe you would have some insight on that.
I worked down there for 16 years, and they did a decent job of
Yeah.
stopping things, but it's not, you're never gonna be 100%, and they won't be able to do that. But they did a decent job, and that's because they have a lot of volunteers that come out during the Haystack Rock Awareness Program, because it's really about the animals out there, the birds.
But they made a big push this year. I mean, it was out there everywhere. Fireworks are banned
Oh,
in Cannon Beach. And so Seaside and Gearhart have,
gotcha.
oh, okay, Cannon Beach can do it, but
I don't know.
what I think people went from Cannon Beach
I know-
and came up north.
I know Portland banned them, and it was quite the show.
Okay.
But No, I don't know. I can't answer that.
May I ask one question of Chad, because I had a phone call, and I need to ask you right now. Do we allow anybody to sell firearms?
Arms?
Yeah.
Yes.
Firearms.
What zone, commercial zone?
Retail, C2.
C2, thank you.
That was kind of off the wall.
And it was a question, and I already found out the answer yet, so I just thought I'd join in a second.
Okay, all
We
right.
used to have a business called Harrison Barrels and Bullets in town. And he was there for many, many years.
Thank you.
Across the highway?
Yes, sir.
Was that in the early 1900s, Chad?
No, that was, I moved here in 96. He was quite the gunsmith.
Okay. Moving forward, the goals list. If you notice, we have a red line on the goals list. The ODOT/City Highway 101 Safety Improvement Plan. But otherwise, everything is, I think, pretty much the same. Is there any corrections, additions, or concerns about the goals list? Okay. Hearing none. We have a visitor maybe, but I don't know if they want to say something.
Miss Darcy, are you there? Would you like to speak?
Wake up.
No, not really. The only thing I can tell you is that the school is open for parking tomorrow, or over the weekend.
It is?
Thank you very much.
There you go.
That's great.
Okay, so moving on down, public hearing has been canceled. We don't have unfinished business. We don't have new business. But beyond that, I spoke to, when this happened, I spoke to Chad about two concerns, and I shared these with David, and we talked some. One of them was the lighting ordinance in Gearhart, which Chad gave us the whole one sentence about, and it says outdoor lighting. It doesn't say interior, exterior lighting, it's just outdoor lighting. So if you have a spotlight in your house, like my neighbors do, I don't know why they have a light there. I said one thing we might look at is the lighting ordinance and see if we wanted to update that. The other thing I talked to him about were short-term rentals. We haven't received any knowledge. David, would you like to
Well, I have some,
speak to your concerns?
I have some input on that, but we received a notification that our neighbor has an STR and list
You
contact.
speak up, your double masks.
And
Yeah.
we've got the notification that we've got an STR, kitty corner from our property. And it lists contact information. And so far, that contact information is kind of dated because those contact people have been changing on a regular basis. And the people that my wife is contacting about the issues are not people that are like the housekeepers, rather than people who are in charge of them. And there's been a poor response in time-wise and effectively. And then when I took those issues to Christie at the city of Gearhart, we learned that when we have issues with the regulations on the SDRs, it's up to the homeowner with the problem to chase these things down. Like she told my wife that she's supposed to call the fire department if she thinks there's an illegal fire in that yard. She told my wife that she's supposed to call the police department if there's something possibly non-compliance in that SDR. And also, we learned through the roundabout that there is no such thing as a 3 strikes rule anymore. So it's that my recollection was when this STR regulation left the planning commission, that there was a 3 strikes issue that you get 3 complaints and you got to reapply for a new permit because you're not playing by the rules. Apparently, that's not the case anymore. I think the city council took that regulation
Yeah.
off
They did.
They did.
without a
They
notification
did.
to us.
The ordinance in there is the ordinance that was originally passed. It was the evolution of the process, but they have never changed anything in that ordinance.
So the point I'm coming from is that the city of Gearhart regulates licenses and collects the fees for these STRs, but they put the onus on the homeowners with the problems to dig to the bottom of the problems. So why are they collecting money when they don't do anything? It's not, in other words, it's not our problem. We heard about the parking issues, we're dealing with parking, but everything else, like fires, noise, overcrowding, barking dogs, that kind of thing, that's the homeowner's issues to deal with, not the city. That's not my understanding of how we left this to, we created this to pass on to the city council. And nobody I talk to knows that when they have a problem, it's not the city's responsibility. Nobody I talk to knows that. I didn't know that.
So is that place has been a vacation rental ever since we passed the
From the
rules back?
beginning, yes.
They have it, okay. That place that just recently had a bunch of remodels?
It's that 8 for 8 on Third.
Oh, okay, it's not a catty corner from you.
It's kitty corner, back corner.
I got it, okay.
So is there a complaint form with the city that can be filed for each of these instances? No?
No. Well, so.
So there's no
take
record.
calls.
Oh,
So let's talk
How does
about,
that work or not work?
well, let's talk about actionable items. Let's talk about the ordinance itself. So
what section is it?
it is
Article 7.
section 7, vacation rental standards and procedures. So when we discussed this, both in the planning commission and in the city council, from a code enforcement opportunity, I was very clear that yes, we have some of these rules in place, but some of them are not going to be enforceable. And I'll give you some examples of that, what that looks like. So a fire pit or some noise and that sort of thing. There's nowhere in Article 7 under short-term vacation rentals that makes that an illegal activity. What Article 7 did is it provided for safety, so we have home inspections. It provided for an amount of occupancy that can be advertised for and should be adhered to for the amount of bedrooms that they have, 2 persons per bedroom. So 3 bedrooms, 6 people. It also says if you have 3 bedrooms, you must have 3 off-site parking spaces. But it does not say you need to use those parking spaces. It just says you must have them as off-site. And what that does is help.
Off-street.
On-site.
Off-street
Or
parking.
off-street.
It helps to alleviate the problem, but it doesn't guarantee that it's going to happen. We couldn't, by the ordinance, we could not prevent people from legally parking next to the street in the right of way and make them park into the driveway. And we could, if we really became change the ordinance. But think of the enforcement. Whose car is this? Did this person just walk down the street? Are they at the tennis court or are they at the house? Did they, or are they just visiting? So, but it helped alleviate that. So we limited the permits. We talked about the occupancy maximum calculation, and we were always very clear, city staff was, that great, okay, so we can put in there that if you have 4 bedrooms, right, you can have 8 people stay in that house. But we're not going to be able to enforce that. Because, let's say there's a couple younger kids, they're not counting it. I don't think we're going to kick them out from that. But not only that, but how do we get into the house to count them? And not only that, but how do we identify the people that are actually staying, or are they just there playing cards, visiting with their aunts, combining multiple houses into one and then dispersing? None of that was illegal. So the way that we enforce that is we look at the advertising. We look at, we have our computer program and we have Christy who scours these things and makes sure that if their occupancy permit, their permit says 8 people, they better be only renting it for 8 people. So we verify that. There's been once or twice where it's been off and we fixed that. So off-street parking, bedroom occupancy, septic system capacity. We're done with that now because they're approved, their septic systems had to be approved for the number of bedrooms that they have. And we had 20 some major repairs done just because of this ordinance. Then the rest of it's on us. We have to notify of the 24-hour representative. They have to have that in place. The neighbor notices, it's on the city. Keeping it as a residential appearance, so it's not neon and that sort of thing. Keeping the off-street parking requirements, making sure they have garbage service. Fire safety health inspection is done to that. Tsunami preparedness, and the fact that they're not selling this permit to the next person. So they can't sell their home and sell that home with their permit. It expires, which has been happening. Those are the actionable items by this ordinance. And so when you filter through some of the things that you talked about that were definite irritants, the fire or the loud noise, there are other ordinances that can accomplish that. If they have an illegal fire, you call it into dispatch, either the fire department or the police department will show up and help take care of that. If you have a lot of noise, then and it's a party going on beyond the hours where they're supposed to, 10 at night, then the fire or the police department will show up to that. But does that give them a strike against their permit? No, because it's not specifically in that. The violation section is the vacation rental permit holder shall be compliant with these standards at all times. Failure to comply will result in revocation of the permit in accordance with Article 15, which also includes a $500 violation. But that's if they didn't provide the parking, if they advertised for too many people that they weren't supposed to, or
What about contact information? It says every time they change contact information, they have to notify you.
Correct.
David, are they notifying you every time they change contact information?
Not to my knowledge. The only time I think we have received more than one notification of the licensing of that property.
Every year.
Each time
Every
listed,
year.
each time, once a year, yes. And each once a year listed the current contact information. But when my wife contacted that, it was not what was listed. It was a lady who was filling in for whoever was not working at that time. And that person told Betty that she didn't know what was going on. And she had no authority to contact anybody to make them change anything.
And that was for the violation of like the fire or the noise.
Well, and then when Betty, my wife, asked Christy about open fire permit that's required, it's free, but you have to have it. How could one residence apply for an open fire permit, campfire in the backyard, but none of the people who rent know that there's that permit sitting there and be trained to deal with what they're supposed to do with an open fire, especially in these conditions. My wife is worried to death that she saw fires, 5 feet flames, 5 feet high, in these dry conditions, and she says, "Do they have a hose over there? Do they have a shovel?"
And that's not required by the permit process at all.
So well, it's part of an educational issue.
No, not even. So with
what are we doing here?
With a hot dog, and marshmallow fire, all we require is it's far enough away from the house, and then they don't burn things like tires. And it's got to be a reasonable size fire pit.
Tires go in your car.
The shot, we'll know because it makes them pretty smoky. But for a 4x4 pile or a special burn, then those require shovels, water source in a certain size away from all the structures. And those are only allowed outside of fire season. So the only thing allowed in fire season here in Gearhart now are hot dog and marshmallow fires, and then burn barrels up to 10 a.m.
But renters don't know that. The foreigners, the transient renters don't know that.
Well, the fire pit has been approved by the fire
I don't
station.
know that.
And if they have a permit, the fire station's
I
been
don't know that
approved.
either.
And other than that, it's really, the only reason for that fire permit was to prevent people from burning things that were illegal. And so if we get a report of thick black smoke, we can go there and then stop that or fine that.
Okay, well, let's say that, I don't know if this is the case, that they have extra people there. They have 15 people there. So there's no complaint process, nothing to file with the city.
What's the violation?
They were only allowed 8.
Okay, so are they staying there all night long?
Yeah,
Okay, so you know that.
I know that.
How does
If
code
they're minors.
enforcement know that?
All right,
If
No, you gotta think of the judge.
I hear what you're
Think
saying.
like the judge, and the judge is gonna say to me, prove to me that those people, and so this is what happens with RVs. This is a perfect example of this. There can be a guy living next to your house, excuse me, and he's got an RV in his place, and you've seen their daughter, son, uncle, brother go into that thing, and they don't come out till the first thing in the morning. So you know that they've been sleeping in there. Well, we'll write a ticket for it, and the judge will be going, so they were sleeping? Yeah. How do you know? How do you know they weren't just up
Why are we
breathing?
going to the judge?
Because that's what we have to do to go ahead and make a charge stick. We can't charge people without due process.
I'm not going to charge, I'm going to file a complaint. I just want to
Oh.
be on the record when they come and apply for their next license the following year, that there have been this many complaints about what's going on at the house.
On the record.
On the record,
In the
No.
file.
in the file.
You still have to prove the complaint.
No,
Yeah, you do. So think of it like okay.
no, I can complain about all sorts of things without proving it.
But we can't hold
Say
them.
again.
There's nothing in Article 7 that allows us to say that there's 500 noise complaints from this one house that they don't get a new permit.
Wait till they all find out all this information.
Yeah.
Well, I've got that information. So I've got some stats here for you. So we'll start with numbers because it's interesting. 2020, we ended up, as of June 30th, with $371,000 in revenue from short-term vacation rentals. And actually, we're looking to exceed that this year. We were above by $75,000 over budget for this year. So 2020 was 371,000. 2019 was 342. So you're seeing, and partly because of COVID, you got a lot of people renting these places. So there is an increase in the amount of people renting. We currently have 75 active permits. One is pending, a new permit, and that's for a condo, because they're in the R3 zone, so they can have new permits. Our R3 zone is the condominiums and the neighborhood between 9th and 10th off of 10th Street near the beach approach. That's an R3
Can we
zone.
cap it at 75?
Huh?
Did we cap it at 75?
You could.
No, the original cap.
No.
85.
We
We
started,
said no more.
we started, I think, at 94.
Oh.
So over time, due to sales, we're losing,
It's called attrition.
yeah. I call it poof, go away. 69 of them are residential, 6 condos, and we have 6 motels, which are exempt from that code. Compliance code. So in 2021, our complaints were 2 parking. One was blocking a driveway, one was unenforceable because it was street parking was permitted, but it was a complaint. And then another one where it was a civil homeowner dispute, not short-term vacation rental related, it was Hatfield and McCoy. So that's what we brought in as far as complaints in 2021 so far.
So please let me elaborate just a moment. My wife was talking to Christy, and Christy responded to my wife and said, "It sounds like you have an issue with the property owner." And my wife says, "No, The property owner is not causing the problem. Her renters are causing the problem. We're paying her to use that property and disrupt our understanding of this licensing of this SDR.
And what was the issue again on this particular one?
I can't recall what, this is a backyard fire pit. And,
5 foot flame lengths?
well, a large fire. And in these conditions where, that's totally inappropriate. This is a tiny little property.
But it's still not in violation of anything, so we're not gonna collect a complaint about that.
But again, to argue with Christie about this, it was not an issue with the property owner. It was an issue with the people who were renting the property.
Sure. And was it called
So
in
the
when it was
property owner-
happening?
The property owner should have contacted the renters, or the contact person should have contacted the renters immediately. We did not have that response or satisfaction of that response.
So when you called Christie, was the fire happening at that moment?
It was she was contacted the next day.
So there's nothing that we can do with that, because if what would have happened, if you would have called and said there was 15-foot flame lengths coming, black smoke, whatever, it was dangerous, then dispatch would have got that call, dispatch would have called the police department would have responded. But next day, we don't have the opportunity to, we shouldn't register that because we didn't get eyeballs on it, even though we trust you, David, but it's like we have to see it and log it and do things. And we'll take police reports if something happens. If there was a major fight break out at one of these short-term vacation rentals, the police report will come to us and we'll log that, because it was kind of some interesting things, because it actually happened, it was reported, and we have a police report. But just ancillary calls, I mean, not that you would do this, but we would have, your neighbor could just call on you have a short-term vacation rental, and they could just make complaints all day long and they may be unfounded. So we have to prove that, and the best way to do it is when it's happening is to call. And regardless of who's in charge, whether it be the homeowner or the person that's renting there, we'll figure that out if something dangerous or nefarious or dumb is going on. And then that way we'll be able to more carefully, they might be in violation of Article 7. But we have to get somebody there to see it and to take care of it. And because that's what the judge requires of us to get through, and I hope that helps explain.
If you videotaped it?
Well,
That's not good enough?
I don't like that idea of videotaping your neighbor.
I know.
I called the fire department, as Chad knows, and they did videotape. The fire department did.
Yeah, is that the one where we ruined the guy's lawn?
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't mean to do that. But yeah, that was an illegal burn. And we took care of that, but that was the homeowner telling a guy to do it. And actually, we could hold the guy that was doing it responsible, and then we called the homeowner and they fixed that.
Well, needless to say, my wife was all over me the next day about not getting any response from the city who regulates and collects the fees.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, in other words, the message to her was, you need to handle it, Mrs. Smith.
You need counseling.
And at the time, let us take that one, because at the time we can do a lot more work. And there's going to be times actually where we can't respond because whatever's happening, but we'll do our best.
If there's a fire, call the fire department. Call the non-emergency number and tell them what's going on.
The average citizen does not know that. The average person I've talked to about SDR issues all told me, we understand 3 complaints and they lose their license.
Well,
That
that's
was
wrong.
one away.
Well, then we need to educate people. Just like I just got educated.
Must be on Facebook too.
Yeah.
I'm good. Facebook, my answer to everything.
That's what Abraham Lincoln said.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's back in the 1900s. No. So the lighting fixtures, I know that this came up at the Gearhart Homeowners Association meeting, I believe. It's come up in our neighborhood as more houses have been built in and everything's been filled in. A lot of these people have these, big lights, or thought they needed to have really bright lights, and so they're bleeding into particularly other neighbors' yards. I know that in my discussions with Chief Bowman, he doesn't like the bright lights because he says that criminals like those because the light is bright and then you can hide in it, you know, if you wanted to break into someone's house, I guess. I haven't tried it. But when you have lights that point down and you get more shadows, then you can see movement and that, so it's much better from the police. I had suggested that this, you know, lighting fixtures shall be shielded or recessed into the building designed to avoid casting glare into adjacent property or upward into the night. I don't know if it's specific enough, and I don't know how the enforcement of that is going. I know in speaking to an electrician putting outside fixtures on a house we built in our neighborhood, he said, I said, those are non-compliant. They were big things, or you know, really big. And he says, it's not my concern. This is what the owner or the builder picked out, and they can put up whatever they want. So I don't know even if there's any kind of enforcement or anything being done like through the, you know, when they get their permits, is there like anything? I don't know.
Sure. Okay, so downward cast lights. So the definition of a downward cast light to me, my interpretation of that one sentence, right, is that a light that is shining primarily down. If it is in a, you know, the old carriage house lights full of glass with a light bulb in there shining in all directions, that is not considered a downward cast light. A street light that happens to be 40 feet above us, 35 feet, whatever, that's downward casting light and it's spreading light everywhere. Well, that is a downward cast light. It just spreads out a little bit farther. A light that is a spot that is right out covering a large part of the yard, that sort of thing, is not necessarily a downward cast light, especially if it's pointed up at somebody's house. So the way I kind of gauge that is it mostly downward light, and can I see the bulb? If I can't see the bulb, now, like street lights notwithstanding, because you can see the bulb because they're so tall, and the ordinance doesn't specify, if I can see the bulb and it is really glaring and I have a complaint, I take care of it. I'm working on one right now where somebody has a newer house that has 3 big lights on it. They're the white bulbs, they're full glass, and eventually what's going to happen is they're going to have to replace that. I have had somebody make the glass opaque by painting it, and that worked out okay. Are there cast lights throughout town that are not legal according to this? All over. It is all over. You know, I think the intention was to, you know, night sky, don't bother your neighbors and things like that. But this has been going on for years and years and years, and so I kind of hold off until I receive a complaint. And when I receive a complaint of an exterior downward cast light, we take care of it. But I don't go around writing tickets to everybody. Actually, what I will do is I won't just take that one. I'll try to find 2 or 3 that are maybe nearby. I'll pick on a neighborhood, and then I'll try to issue 2 or 3 letters. And I've never had to. Did I ever have to bring? There was one where it got pretty close to court, but we got that remedy. Yeah.
Would a flag light be considered outward?
I kind of stay away from the whole flags. I mean, if there's a complaint and it's, you know, just, you know, blocking your night sky or something like that, I'll address it. And there are ways for people to install lights that are downward cast on the top of their pole. But I haven't had any complaints about flag lights. Are there flag lights with upward cast? I think the city might be guilty of that. I'll talk to them maybe.
So I have one more point to make, and it's just an FYI. It's not a question, it's not a subject for debate, but when I attended the city council meeting the other night regarding the contractors' hours of operation, I noticed that the people who were standing to speak were not required to, they were required to give their name, but not their address. And I was asking about that the following day. I said, how does that work? When anybody came to the planning commission you're asked to give your name and your Gearhart address. Apparently that is not good anymore because the chief of police thinks these people are gonna be burglarized while they're testifying in front of the city council. So they now go to a sign-in sheet after they give their name and sign in their Gearhart address. Which means I have to go down to the city hall to find out if this contract that we spoke is a Gearhart resident or not, or is a licensed contractor in Gearhart or not, but they made a presentation to the city council. So are we gonna start requiring people to delete their address when they say their name to speak to us?
That's
Yeah.
beyond you.
I can refer them.
Yeah, you can also
That
just
is-
legally.
Yes, I have to have anyone who testifies their address for
Yes.
standing.
Right.
They have to be allowed to have notice that if they have testified, they have the right to an appeal just as the applicant. So, and that is a requirement.
That's a land use.
You will not be not asking.
And as far as the city council goes, the meeting they referred to, it's not our policy to do that. I think that was a comment made by a attorney that was at 7 o'clock, had already worked 13 hours and was involved in a very busy thing. That's the first time I've ever heard about it. We're not changing our policy. And so that incident, sure, we just let it go at that time, but moving forward, we're not going to be doing that.
So it will be name and address, please.
Just as it has been all these years, yes, sir.
I mean, for my part, when someone comes and testifies for us, I want to know their address to see if they are close to the property or they're, live in Warrenton, but just thought I'd say something. So, yeah, that's an important information for us.
I've not been directed to change our policy. I think it was just a one-off day.
That really stood out to me. What is this thing done at the city council? So that's all I had for your information.
Okay. Do we have anything else to discuss tonight? We're trying to talk about some interesting things. Carol, do we have something on the agenda for next month?
September, you're having the hearing on the draft parks plan.
Oh, we are. That's interesting. I guess maybe you should be here then.
Please.
Okay.
Unless something happens with the committee, they're not quite ready, but we put this notice out. and so-
Okay, just went right over the top of my head, so. Do we have any other concerns from the commission tonight? Do we have any questions for the land use attorney? This is always a time where you have a question, you can dive and ask him.
You can get free legal advice.
Free legal advice. All right, it's 7:30, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you for attending tonight.
Thank you, volunteers.
Thank you very much, everybody.
That's okay.
I have answers to your question about